Your Excellency, Mr. Alemayu Tejanu, Mr. Carlos Lopez, Ms. Fatima Denton, my colleagues Dr. Otmar Edenhofer, Dr. Yuba Sukona, Dr. Ramon Pix Madruga, Secretary of the IPCC, Dr. Renate Christ, Head and members of the TSU of Working Group 3, coordinating lead authors, review editors, ladies and gentlemen. I have to start on a sad note. I have been informed that one of our colleagues, an author of Chapter 12, Dr. Luxin Huang, unfortunately passed away. He was from the China Academy of Urban Planning and Design. And I would request that to honor his memory and as a mark of respect, that we please stand for a minute and observe silence. Thank you very much. We will write to the next of kin in his family and convey our condolences to him. I believe this meeting is an extremely important milestone, as Dr. Fatima Denton has reminded us. The lead author meeting, as Professor Yuba Sukona also mentioned very eloquently, is by far the most important of the lead author meetings that we hold. And he also reminded us appropriately that we have just a few months before the completion of the Working Group 3 report. And to set the context, let me remind you of the UN General Assembly resolution that brought the IPCC and ratified its existence as a body set up by the WMO and UNEP way back in 1988. This was UN General Assembly Resolution 43, which required the IPCC to carry out internationally coordinated scientific assessment of the magnitude, timing, and potential environmental and socio-economic impact of climate change and realistic response strategies. So Working Group 3 essentially is carrying out a scientific assessment of these realistic response strategies. And clearly, this would be an extremely important component of what, under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, is going to be undertaken as a review of the aspirational goal that has been set under the UNFCCC in the last 3 COPs that have been held in different locations. In this review, undoubtedly, a defining factor that would essentially determine the position of countries collectively all over the world would be what comes out in the Working Group 3 report as part of what you might call realistic response strategies. And therefore, the policy relevance of this report would have to touch and go into depth on issues such as negative and low-cost options, trajectories for stabilizing and peaking of emissions, co-benefits associated with specific strategies and actions, the whole range of issues related to ethics and equity, institutional structures and policies, all of which you have worked on very hard to provide knowledge based on the assessment that you've carried out. There are, of course, also several important cross-cutting issues. We hope, and I think the world expects, much greater detail on regional aspects. Clearly, when you deal with realistic response strategies, it's not a case of one size fits all. I was delighted to learn that this country has, despite the fact that it's got a very low level of emissions per capita, has embarked on a path of low carbon development. And this clearly is at the heart of the phrase of common but differentiated responsibility that is there in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Because while it is a differentiated responsibility, we should not forget the common part of it. I think we have to deal with water and earth systems, carbon cycle, and most importantly, Article 2 of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. I'm delighted to see, and we've been reminded about the fact that we would be dealing with human settlements, infrastructure, and spatial planning, social science aspects of climate change. If I may say so, in the past few assessments, this has been an area where perhaps the IPCC has not provided the kind of strength of assessment that is expected of it, particularly for a policy-relevant document that is essentially going to provide the framework for action at the global level. And therefore, we have this unique opportunity of seeing that the social science aspects of mitigation strategies are gone into in considerable depth as far as this assessment is concerned. We certainly need very up-to-date knowledge on technologies, risks and costs associated with them, and we also need to provide some insights into how we can facilitate consideration of adaptation and mitigation. Now, here may I say that our adherence to procedures and practices is the strength of what the IPCC produces, because our procedures and practices have stood the test of time, and they have been refined further, updated further on the basis of the review that the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and I requested of the Inter-Academy Council. And as you're aware, the governments of the world deliberated in depth over several sessions of the IPCC plenary on the recommendations that came from the Inter-Academy Council, and all of these have been implemented very effectively. The task of taking into account the 20,000 odd comments that Dr. Yuba Sukona reminded us of is clearly a great challenge, but it's also a remarkable opportunity to add strength to this report, because it is on the basis of this very transparent and open process whereby we are getting comments at various stages of the draft that we can ensure a level of quality that would give credibility and effectiveness to the contents of this report. I also want to remind our good friends over here that we are going to be under intense scrutiny. Every word that you write in this report is going to be scrutinized by the public. We are living in an age when communications, information flows are instantaneous and extensive. So therefore, we have to be absolutely sure, and we've got to really reach a gold-plated standard of how we're going to take into account the comments that we have received and how we're going to ensure robustness in the assessment that we carry out. I am sure that the distinguished set of authors who have worked so hard over the past couple of years and spending long hours and working together in a spirit of great collaboration and partnership have looked at all these aspects, and undoubtedly in the few months that are left before the completion of the report, these efforts will be intensified further. Let me end by just telling you what, restating what Dr. Yuba Sukona has said. I hope you will get some time to see this beautiful city. When I came here, I've been here several times. On one occasion, I went and saw Lucy, which is the oldest, used to be the oldest human being that has been found by society. And I'll tell you something and let you into a secret, which of course is not there in any part of the assessment that you carry out, and it's not available in literature, either gray or otherwise. Lucy was named Lucy because I believe the archaeologists who were carrying out the excavation had the radio on, and the song that was playing on the radio was Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the famous Beatles song. And that's why they decided to name this remarkable discovery as Lucy. Now, Sir Paul McCartney, who's a good friend, I mentioned this fact to him, and he says, oh, is that what it was? He says, I'll tell you the story behind the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. He said, I had gone to John Lennon's house, and his daughter came along, and she had a little drawing, and he said, I asked her what it was, and there were stars in the sky, and there was a girl standing at the bottom, and he asked her what this picture was all about, and she said, this is Lucy, and those are stars, they are diamonds, so this is Lucy and the diamonds. So, you know, he said, John Lennon and I talked about it, and we said, why don't we write a song called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? And that was the start of that song. Of course, it's probably no coincidence that the letters of the song add up to LSD. But let me end by expressing my deep gratitude to the government of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, to the Economic Commission for Africa, the co-chairs of Working Group 3 who have worked extremely hard and in this period have produced a set of 2 reports, the special report on renewable energy sources and climate change mitigation, which I think is a defining document in the field. I'd like to thank Dr. Jan Minks and other members of the TSU, Dr. Renata Christ and the staff of the Secretariat of the IPCC, and of course, the very core strength of this entire effort, the coordinating lead authors, the review editors, and the contributing authors. And may I say, it's a great privilege to be in this city and in this country that I have really fallen in love with, and this has happened in 3 stages. I went to school in Christian schools where you had to do study all the Christian scriptures, and in the Acts of the Apostles, St. Paul, I remember, met someone who was described as the eunuch of Ethiopia, a very powerful person, and he became a proselytizer. He converted to Christianity and preached Christianity. That was my first encounter, and I was so intrigued with the name Ethiopia and the beautiful stamps that were issued at that time that I studied a little bit about Ethiopia. Then, of course, the second stage was getting familiar to and addicted to Ethiopian food. And in Washington, D.C., in Adams Morgan, you have a whole row of restaurants which give you delightful Ethiopian cuisine. And of course, the third stage has been coming here and meeting the leadership of this country. I want to salute the late Prime Minister of this country, Mr. Melis, who was the tallest leader you could have got in the world today. And I know this is a country which has a remarkable future. It's a great delight and a privilege to be here. And I wish you all the best in this meeting. Thank you.